I'm going to be going over how to map drives with Linux. It's actually not mapping drives, it's actually mounting a drive or a network resource. And I'll go over how you do it in Windows versus how you do it in Linux. And first off, we'll go over how we do it with the graphical user interface. And then second up, we're going to go over how you do it with the command line. And if you haven't ever set up a network share and accessed it with Linux through the command line, it's pretty interesting because there's a lot of steps. Unfortunately, on this one, I actually do prefer how Windows does it over Linux, but I totally understand why Linux does it the way it does it. Here's just a brief overview of the virtual server I've got set up for this demo. This one is running the Zima OS. We are on 192.168.1.1 for our local IP address. And I've got this set up with a RAID 5 share. We'll go into our files. And we've got our RAID storage with a test folder. And for our shares, we're just going to be using this RAID share right here. I have set up an extra user called test for this with read-write permissions. So these are the network addresses we'll be using for this demo. Yours obviously will be different. That's just what this is for this demo. Mapping a network drive in Windows is extremely easy. Just go into your File Explorer, come into your taskbar right here. You type in your remote network information. And we've got our RAID storage right here. We just right click, map network drive, and we'll choose the Z drive and auto connect. And that's it. For Windows, there you go, map network drive. Now the Linux way is actually pretty close to the Windows way. You just open up your File Explorer. With this one, I've got Nemo installed just because it matches my theme. However, you could use the default Nautilus that comes with GNOME, or you could use Dolphin that comes with KDE. They all work very close to the same. They've got an input title bar where you would paste your address. That's what we're going to be doing. I was just showing you that they all pretty much look the same. So we'll go up to our title bar. We paste in our address to our server. For this, we'll be using the SMB protocol. I find that the SMB protocol is more universal if you're dealing with any kind of NAS or home server, home lab setup. SMB protocol is more universal than, say, NFS would be. So that's why we're using it. Just hit enter. We're going to enter in our username and password that we're going to connect with. If this is for your home lab or for your small office, you probably don't have a domain set up. Just leave this as work group. Then we'll enter in our password to the share. Hit remember forever and hit connect. And there we go. Now, to bookmark this, you would hit Control D, and that'll add a little bookmark right here. So upon reboot, these should reconnect. Let's go ahead and demo that real quick. Here we are, right here, our bookmark. Click on it, it auto reconnects and passes that password through because we saved it in our password keychain. And just to demo what it looks like in Nautilus that comes with GNOME, it's got it right here. It's got that bookmark, same thing. They all use the same shortcuts as far as Control D to make the bookmark. And the last one we'll check is Dolphin. Looks like Dolphin didn't do it, but let's type in this address again. For Dolphin, let me reboot into a virtual machine with KDE. So here we are on a system running KDE. It's the exact same setup with CachyOS, default install, nothing modified, and with this, we already run into errors. For some reason, Dolphin does not like whenever you use the exact same method that Windows uses, that GNOME uses, the Nautilus file manager, the Nemo file manager. You type in that same address here, you get errors. You try and access it just through network, it can discover the server, and I've checked the IP address and everything. It's pulling the correct information. It's got the correct DNS for local resolving of host names and everything. It can't do it. However, there is a workaround, and that leads me in to the next portion of my video for graphical user interfaces, because you might run into this on XFCE, you might run into this on Hyperland or some other desktop environment. You need something called Gigolo. And I'm going to get into installing and setting up Gigolo to manage your network connections. So if you run into this issue to where you open up your file manager and it doesn't work, if you get the same kind of bullshit to where you enter it in, oh, it doesn't exist. There's a way around that, and I'm going to get into that right now. So if you're running KDE on an Arch-based system, it's just sudo pacman -S Gigolo. And there we go, and it's installed. One other prerequisite you'll need, and this is only if you're on KDE or any kind of desktop environment that is not GNOME based, so like Hyperland or KDE, you're going to need to install the GNOME Virtual File System for SMB, or the Windows Share in Gigolo isn't going to show up correctly. We'll go ahead and install that right now. Also, if you're on a distribution that doesn't have SMB client pre-installed, you'll need to install that with whatever your package manager is, SMB client. It's already pre-installed with CachyOS, though. Most distributions, I believe, do ship that by default. So if we go into Gigolo, I'm going to go over this section a little bit more coming up, but I just wanted to show you what we're adding here is this Windows Share option. If you don't install the GNOME Virtual File System for KDE or some other desktop environment that is non-GNOME based, this will not show up. You'll only get FTP and SSH. You won't see Windows Share at all. So that's what this package does, is it makes this show up. And I'm going to go over setting up this bookmark right after this section right here. Let's go ahead and get a bookmark set up. Click Add. And for the name, we're just going to use the folder name of the share. So for me, it's RAID storage, RAID-storage. For the color, just choose whatever color you want. You can leave it as default if you'd like. Choose auto-connect. And for the service type, let's choose Windows Share. For the server, it's going to be your server's IP address. For me, it's 192.168.1.8. The share name is the shared folder that you're going to be connecting to. And for this optional information, it will prompt us after this, but I'm going to go ahead and just fill out the username. For me, it's test. For this, if you're a small office or just a home lab setup, you're probably not going to be set up as a domain. More than likely, you do not have a domain controller in your network. So leave this as workgroup. Type in the password to the shared folder. For me, it's test123. And remember forever. That'll save it to your keychain. Go ahead and close that. There's our network share. And hey, there we go. Fuck you, KDE. We got to it anyways. And if you want to bookmark this, you can right-click on this folder or your shared folder and choose Add to Places, and it'll add it over here. That way you'll be able to reconnect to it easier whenever you reboot your system. And I'm going to show you up next how to add this to your auto start. So whenever you reboot, Gigolo will start up. And I do want to make some caveats about how it auto starts, so you'll be aware of this. We do want to set the edit and preferences for Gigolo, the interface, and we want to minimize to notification area. That's just so the window itself doesn't pop up. It just comes out on your taskbar down here. So it's not intrusive every time you reboot. And I do want to make a special note. If you've got your system set up to auto login where you do not type in a password when you turn your computer on or restart your computer, Gigolo will open up and it will prompt you for a password. This is because in Linux, to unlock your keychain, it requires you to type in a password. So if you don't type in a password when you log in, you just have it set to auto login, your keychain doesn't unlock. And that's why you would get prompted a second time to enter a password. It's a extra layer of security for systems that auto log in. So just be aware of that. And I will repeat this again whenever I go over the section for setting this up for GNOME. It's just because some people that don't use KDE might just skip over this section. So you'll hear that repeated twice on this. So up next, we'll show you how to go ahead and make it auto login. We'll just go over to settings, type in auto, go down to auto start, click on add application, type in Gigolo, right there, just hit OK, and there we go. It hasn't auto started yet because we haven't rebooted the system, but it's added. We'll go ahead and demo that. Let's go ahead and reboot the system. Let's open up our Dolphin browser. And there we are. We're back to our test folder, and no passwords needed to be re-entered and no errors. So that's it for KDE. On to GNOME. This is on Arch, obviously, so we're going to use the Pacman to install it. All right. Pretty easy. Let's go ahead and get it fired up. Now that we've got everything installed, let's go ahead and set up a bookmark. And a bookmark, again, is a map drive if you're coming from the Windows world. We're going to go ahead and just give it a name. I'm going to call it the same name as the folder that I'm going to be connecting to. Color doesn't matter. It's just whatever your preference is. We're going to want auto-connect. Click that for on. The service type, we're going to want Windows Share. Server is going to be the IP address of the server we're connecting to. This is my Zima server that I'm running. The share name is the folder that you're going to be connecting to. This information is optional because it's going to prompt us whenever we try to connect. But I'm going to go ahead and type in the username that I want to connect to this share as. Since you're going to be more than likely on a home network or on a small business network, you probably don't have a domain server. So I would leave this as workgroup. Then we're going to give it the password to that location. So not your desktop password, but the actual password for the username that is connecting to that remote server. We're going to tell it to remember forever. Hit connect. We've got it here. And now we're connected. And if you opened up your file manager, you would see that it's connected. And it's also got a bookmark there. The next thing we're going to want to do is go into Edit and go into Preferences. We're going to go into Interface and choose Start Minimized in Notification Area. The reason we're doing this is because we're going to need Gigolo to be a startup application. So whenever you boot your computer up, you're going to need Gigolo to automatically start up after you log into your system. And I do want to make a special note about auto logins. If you try to set this up with an auto login, so like you reboot your computer and your system automatically logs in, it will then prompt you for your password to unlock the keychain to get Gigolo up and running. But if you are just normally rebooting your system and you do type in your password, you don't have to have that second prompt for you to enter your password for a second time. So that's just a caveat for anybody that is doing an auto start on their computer. So if you had like your computer in your living room or somewhere and you had to auto log in and you're not typing your password in, you would be prompted again to unlock your keychain in order for this to reconnect these network drives. So just be aware of that if you auto log in. For GNOME, to set up an auto start application, we're going to need an extra package installed called GNOME Tweaks. It does come already pre-installed with CachyOS. I'm not sure what all distributions pre-package that. If you don't have this installed, just go into your software center and look up GNOME Tweaks. We'll go into Startup Application in our plus sign, find Gigolo, hit add. Go ahead and reboot the system to test it. Go into our File Explorer. I've installed Nemo. I know it comes with Nautilus for GNOME. I don't like Nautilus. And there we are. We've got our bookmarks already up and running, and you don't have to enter any passwords. Gigolo is running in the background. And that's it for GNOME. In Windows, if we want to do the same thing, and we're in our terminal, we have a pretty easy command, a netuse command. We got our netuse, the drive letter that we want to map, the remote location, the server or workstation we're going to be mapping to, the username, and if we want it persistent, if you want it to show up whenever you reboot. You've got one easy command. Type in your password for that user. We can go over to the new mounted drive, which is the Z drive. And there we go. Done. Now, on the flip side of that, the Linux way, holy shit. Like, Linux, I understand reasons. There are reasons. But, and this is coming from a Microsoft engineer that has done network administration for over 20 years. Switching over to Linux, my God, like, it boggles my mind the amount of complexity that Linux has involved. It's way more difficult than it needs to be. But I understand, like, after getting used to this and learning it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes logical sense. I get it. I see both sides of the coin if you're a Windows administrator or a Linux administrator. But me having to flip back and forth between the two, what a pain in the ass it was to wrap my mind around how Linux does it. So we just showed you the Windows way. Super fucking easy, right? Let's do it the Linux way. So first off, like we went over in the graphical user interface way, is you're not mapping a drive and saying, hey, I've got this fictitious drive letter that is mounting to a shared folder or to a shared drive, a resource on the network. You're making a mount point. You're basically making a connection or a bookmark that references a folder on your local drive that has a system link that goes to the network share. So it's a completely different way of thinking about how you would logically talk to a map drive or a mount drive, a network share. And like I said, the Linux way is super, super fucking complex. It doesn't need to be. I understand reasons, but it doesn't need to be. So let's go through it. The first thing we're going to need to do is make a local mount folder. So we'll go ahead and do that. For this, it's the RAID storage from our Zima OS. We are also going to be setting up a credentials file. And the credential file is going to be located under root. And we're going to be making this .smb cred file. You can name that whatever you want. This just goes with a good naming scheme because we're going to be doing SMB through all of this just because most of the drives you're going to connect to through like a Synology or probably any kind of Windows server or Windows workstation that you're going to be networking back to. It's much more universal using SMB than NFS or something like that. So we're going to go ahead and use the touch command. Touch is just going to create the file, and then we're going to hop into the file using the editor Nano. So we'll go ahead and run those. And I've already filled that file out. Right here, you would have your username and your password. We'll go ahead and hit Control X. It would prompt you to save that, but since I've already done that, we don't need to save the file again. Next, we need to set the permissions. We're going to set this for the SMB cred file. We're going to set the permission to 600. 600 is going to give us the read-write permission for the owner. And so the next thing we need to do is edit a file called fstab. Now, fstab contains a lot of different information. Let's go ahead and hop into it using the editor Nano. Now, this information you're seeing right here, do not mess with it. This is your hard drive. This is telling your system where all these different locations are as far as like your root directory, your boot, your home. Don't mess with those. We are going to be adding the network connection that we want. And we'll go ahead and go over what this is doing. So right here, we've got the server we're connecting to, or the workstation, whatever the network share is. So we're connecting to the Zima server is 192.168.1.8 / RAID storage. We're then telling it to basically take that and do a link, do a map drive, but a mount to our local storage folder that we've created. We're going to be using Common Internet File System. That's SMB. I had to look that up because I was like, what? I can't even remember what all these acronyms mean from time to time. There's just so many. We're going to be using the credentials and where we created that credentials file at in our root.smb cred. We're going to be using the user ID and the group ID of 1000. That is default on the network. And we are not going to be doing a check on the server for permissions because we are providing the permissions ourselves. And version 3, that's the SMB version, and these SMB 3.0. The last two zeros are telling the system that we don't want to do a file check on these, and we don't want to be checking this on boot up. We're not scanning the files because this is a remote share. More than likely, any scenario you're going to have, it's going to end in a 0 space 0. So we've got that. We'll go ahead and exit out, Control X and then Y and enter. That saves it. We're going to reload our daemon and then we're going to mount it. From there, we can go ahead and go into mounts and let's go into that folder. And there we go. Now you're in it. We see that there's the test123 folder. And the Z command that I'm using, that's Zoxide. So like if you're in the terminal all the time, I flip back and forth between lots of terminal use and then lots of graphical use. It just depends on whatever my workflow is. If you're in the terminal a lot, I highly, highly recommend you watch one of my very first videos, Zoxide, how to install it, because that's just the Z command. So if you wanted to go back into your RAID storage folder, just for instance, instead of typing out the entire path, we could just go Z space RAID. And since we've already been in that folder, it understands, oh, you've been in there before, it's probably this. It remembers different things. So you could just go back to your root directory, you hop into your terminal, you could go into you don't even have to finish spelling it because it remembers your routes. That's back into your mount. Or if you started back over and you're like, oh, I need to get into that RAID directory, get into the RAID one. There you go. So if you don't have Zoxide installed, I highly recommend you watch my video, Zoxide. So get that installed. And that's how you map a resource on your network through the command line in Linux. It is way more convoluted than Windows. But I totally understand all the different things that it's doing. You know, if you go through it logically, you're like, oh, well, all that makes sense. It's a whole lot more work. And if I was doing this on a daily as a system administrator, obviously you're going to have your cheat sheet because there's too much to type in. You can remember it, but it's just too convoluted sometimes, you know, to type in all these extra things when you're like, I just want a resource on my network mapped where, boom, I get into it. So definitely easier on Windows on that one. Linux, holy shit. Like, yeah, that's a whole lot more. Now, yes, I do want to bring this to everyone's attention. I am completely aware that it is a clear text password in a file saved on your computer. It is under your /root folder. You would need an administrative password to access that. So if someone's accessing that file, you've already been pwned. But the proper way to do it, if you're a small business or a larger network, would be to use Kerberos or Active Directory. And I might do a future video on Kerberos, but if you're just a home lab and you're just accessing things on your local network, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's probably okay to do that because, like I said, if someone gets access to that file, they've already pwned your network. So I wanted to get that out of the way before anybody gets in the comments, blah, 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 that's clear text, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but if they can access it, you've already been pwned. So I really hope that clears things up on Windows networking versus Linux networking. And I hope that teaches you how to do it in a much more simple and understandable way. If you haven't been over to the website yet, check out impulsetechshop.com. That's where you've got the Zoxide installation guide. It'll have all the easy copy and paste commands, depending on if you're on Debian, Fedora, Arch. And there's all kinds of different guides and things on there. Anytime I make a video, I create a blog post that goes along with it, especially if there's commands. So I'll make sure that it's in an easy to copy and paste format that's easy to see. Every now and again, when I'm using my website builder, it does sometimes screw up the code and I have to go in and reformat it. So if you do come across something like that that doesn't work, just leave a comment on the video and I'll go double check that whenever I get time. So anyways, that's it for this video. Hope that clears everything up. Have a good one. Catch you in the next one.